So,
We'll be starting now. I mean, I was just going through YouTube just to, get some points on inequality. So in YouTube and all, it's the discourse of inequality is dominated with the economic aspect of inequality. I got a lot of income inequality video in YouTube prepared by a lot of economists and like channels like TEDx and all. But when I go back and search like in my textbook, I went back to my critical theory textbook and I went back to the philosophical aspect of it, and I understood that it's like we cannot call it like economic inequality or like income inequality. It's like inequality. There are multiple things that is coming under the umbrella of inequality. Me and Vijay were like, having a discussion on marginalization and all. It is also coming under inequality. And there are multiple things, and I think we will be discussing about that in the discussion that we are having. So I was thinking, and I got to like put down some forms of inequality that I understood, and it's like individual level there is a inequality. So if we are going back to the question of inequality, there is one interesting question: is inequality inevitable or natural? And Aristotle says it's natural. He says that so people have different abilities. People should be getting reward based on their ability, and he justifies slavery based on the idea that some people are good to be ruled and some people are good as rulers. But right now, when we think of that, we think like it is an arbitrary system. So when it comes to French Revolution time, Rousseau said inequality is like there is a natural aspect to it. The intellectual capacity of people may be different, but inequality by and large is caused by social hierarchies or social systems that is set up by human beings. So we can go ahead and look into those, and we can find out a way by which we can reduce inequalities or eradicate inequality. But the real question is that should we eradicate inequality, or if we want to eradicate inequality, what inequalities that we need to eradicate? So this is a very large discussion. So uh, philosophically, so I'm going back and I'm thinking it from a perspective of a philosopher. So Hegel and Marx were the two philosophers who talks about inequality and human emancipation. According to them, history throughout history, we can see human beings struggling to attain dignity and equality. That was their take on. But when I am looking, they said that from slavery it moved into feudalism, so that hierarchy and oppression got reduced, and the people in this feudalism, those who are ruled, get more dignity and more with more freedom than the slave. And we turned our system into capitalism. Capitalism, the worker and the so-called the one who owns and manages the means of production. These guys, and they are having greater freedom. They are getting a lot of things because they are contributing. They have the ability to manage things. They have the ability to manage capital, and the people who are workers are having more freedom and equality than the people who was there in this feudalist side. So we can see the transition happening. But still, when we say that people have freedom, people also thinks like we want to attain dignity, we want to be like them, and we want to be better than them. That is also a cause of inequality that we have in society. So, that is a natural aspect of inequality. We are seeing that in terms of economic inequality that we see in society. In case of India, if we are looking, the amount of wealth that top 10% having compared to the bottom 90% is enormous. Likewise, in many countries in throughout the world, we are seeing, and the amount of wealth the Western nations hold compared to African nations and southern nations, South Asia. It was very huge, but right now we are catching up. But so my point is that we won't stop when equality is attained. We will accumulate more, and we will create another form of inequality. So this is the context that I want to set the discussion on, and I also want to ask you. This is my perspective on inequality. It won't stop. It will continue until and unless We are consciously deciding which are the aspects that we want to tackle and solve for, and what is the objective. So I want to ask you. I will start with Tejasvi. Tejasva, what is your understanding on inequality? Like for you, what is inequality and what are the
So for me, inequality stems from how much accessible, how much access do you get to the resources, right? Either it is the government resources, it is the private resources, or the monetary resources, anything, or the educational resources. So first of all, the inequality arises from the accessibility, right? So there are many theories related to that, like the conflict theory of the Karl Marx, like something I can think of society is divided into groups to compete for power structures. So there the inequality starts from the ruling classes, right? Then there is some one theory on functionalism, like inequality serves a purpose in a society by kind of motivating people to fill the different roles in it. So he kinds of justifies inequality rather than challenging it. So in my terms, as far as I including the sociological theory and that, I feel inequality stems from accessibility, but it has also a role in it, and it leads to some hierarchy also. So yes.
So you are saying that inequality is basically based on the accessibility to resources. Yeah. So yeah, it's a very important aspect because when you have access to something, like you are more likely to exhibit that excellence and get reward for that. So either I'll come to you. So what's your take on this topic? Haider? How do you view inequality?
I would take a step back rather. So we have zoomed in on humanity, right? Like the lens of inequality. I would say fundamentally for me, so when I was going through the word itself, what inequality means is not an equal, right? So is two equals to three? No, right? Inequality for me basically means when you compare two things, are they the same? It does not necessarily have to be with, say, humans. As an elephant equal to human. If you go to atomic level, there are some similarities, right? Like if you take a cosmic perspective, zoom in further away, right? We are all made of same essential elements like nitrogen. 76 percentage of Earth is nitrogen. So we all are, similar in that aspect, at least 76 percentage of it. Inequality means not being same. And that's as it is. It's objective for me. I don't add a lens of justice. I don't add a lens of, morality to it. Inequality for me is not being equal, and that's objective. I look view it as objectively. That's my take on it.
So I was mentioning like there are different types of inequality. So intellectually and capabilities of people like athletic performance or intellectual capability can be different. But we have systems like the caste systems and all, which is creating inequality and which is creating like, which is limiting the access to resources to the people, and that is why we are addressing the question of inequality here. So I mean, this is a point of discussion that we will be having in the next team. So what is your take on this topic?
Yeah, to start off, as you told, right, there are certain level of inequalities or where people are not equal in terms of access, in terms of even what they have inherited in the past. There is a past which is outside our control. So, what's that? What's the impact of that on the current situation? And what, as present generation, we can hope that future policies can play a part in that. And that is within our control. But as you rightly pointed out, there are certain biases, there are certain deep rooted bad ideas in the minds of people which will not go away. And that is different in different societies also. The level of inequality or injustice, for me, both are related to each other, inequality and injustice. And the level of that in India will be different from that in US or any Western country. And there is a historical reasoning to it also. If you see before, like in the past, UK and Italy used to be like led by a group of aristocrats. But post World War, the situation improved. But then obviously, but in India, keeping the context of such a diverse land, because even if you see within Asia, if you see places like Korea, there is a social cohesion because there is a homogeneity among the population. As you rightly pointed out, certain something related to caste, the land itself is so like heterogeneous in nature, so it's tough to do it. For me, as Haider also pointed out, it's not equal, but I think we can improve the situation in the future in certain for some controllable factors.
So interesting actually. And so we are like focusing on inequality as like an objective thing. Like, do you think inequality is subjective, or is there a subjective aspect to inequality?
No, my view is not objective. I mean, I attach a certain level of subjectiveness to it, and because you can't, when you are living your life in the society, you will see the repercussions of inequality and injustice. And when you see that at the ground level, you have to take a stand and you have to take a subject.
Coming to Digvijay, do you think inequality is good, or attaining perfect equality is a good that we can pursue?
So my perspectives on inequality kind of developed when I was in a class of game theory, and Professor Lada presented this game of the ultimatum game. And what we observed in that game that people who are poor, they will become more poor and poor in an economic transaction because they have more weightage on their present on the present than future, and that will allow the other person who values his future more to take advantage of that poor person. And so in any economic transaction, the poor will keep becoming poorer and the richer will keep becoming richer. And so I mean that should not happen. I mean that's something fault. So I think I agree with Tejaswa what he said about access. I think inequality is whether you talk about social inequality. So inequality, yes, right term. I'm using the right term. So whether you talk about social inequality or economic inequality, I think both are forms of barriers to access to technology, to information, and to like social or economic capital. So because I think a lot about education, and then I was thinking about inequality in terms of the education in the field of education. So education is can also be termed as a technology, right? So technology is something that takes the raw material, the raw something, and makes it as a capital, like something that you can build a value upon it. So it adds a value to certain things. So that's a technology, right? So I think education is also a technology, and similarly, the access to education, if there is unequal access to education, then that inequality, I mean that is something that we should to try to solve. Technology and information, so like we talked about why people who are socially disadvantaged, they do not focus more on education, or they do not send their children to education because they do not see examples of people getting achieving higher economic outcome through education. So there is information gap. So there is a variation in the information that people from higher socioeconomic background have, and the information that people from lower socioeconomic background have. So this inequality in information and inequality to, I think, social inequality, like we talked about casteism and all, they also created a barrier to access to technology, because at that time, what was technology? At that time, the wells, the wells which you extracted water from, they were also a form of technology, right? And I think certain castes were not allowed to access the well and all. So because technology, you use technology, and you it's a like catalyst to build your own economic value and social value. So if you prevent access to technology, that will just widen and widen the present economic or social inequality that is already there.
So you're saying that by and large access to resources should be there, like opportunity to do what you want to do should be there to set up like society in a more efficient and effective way. That's your take. So based on that, I'm putting the second thought that we have today. So if you want to solve the problem of inequality, so what would you say the objective of solving inequality? For instance, I would say that inequality in its extreme form can create revolution. If you look into French Revolution, if you look into Russian Revolution, both are different types of revolution, but the role played by inequalities in those revolutions are huge. For having a stable society, for having like to stop bloodshed, we need certain level of equality. So that is one objective. That's very capitalist. That's very. I mean, I'm coming from the perspective of the people who is ruling. From their perspective, it's an objective like to hold inequality in a certain threshold that would prevent the revolution. Secondly, so if you are asking me, secondly, I'll say, I mean, if you are thinking of a society with efficiency, if you want to have an efficient society, you need to test the capabilities of all the people. For instance, some people are huddled by the caste system that we have. They are not getting an opportunity to express themselves, express their skills. They may be better than the people who are already there, who are doing it. So if we want to have this fair competition also, we need to give them equal opportunity or equal starting point. If you're starting a race, everyone should start from the same line, and everyone should be equal. Like we have male to male race, female to female race, and we have like competition for people with disabilities like parents, right? So among equals, we need to provide them equal opportunity. So that is second to have an efficient. So likewise, what are the objectives of you know solving the problem of inequality? And I would like to start with Reggie. Reggie, what do you think the objective? Like, do you think that it's like I mean, it's good to have a solution to some inequality questions that we have. What
So I think, as you rightly pointed out, like I think first, I mean, going back to the technology point of Digvijay, right? Technology can be a very important tool. So I'll give you an example in education only. For technology, you can increase the access or like availability of materials to teachers and students. But you need to have a proper monitoring system also, which is also dependent on the technology itself. But people in those positions, if they are not doing the monitoring properly or are not taking action points, then there is no use of that access. And same, like as you pointed out. So first for me is political will, right? Political will and having a proper good governance structure in this country. Once that is set up, then all these inherent biases, right? People will learn that ultimately these inherent biases are stemming from, like as you pointed out, unequal opportunities. So what can be done on these points? For that, data access to be should be open to the public. Like whatever data is being monitored, there should be an official statement on that. I think these two parts for me are very important. And that will bring out the real picture, and then people will be like there will be a, like as we call in Hindi, right? Mahal means ecosystem for the government to take some stand or people in the higher positions to take some actions on it. So I think that's my take.
what is your take on it from a technology perspective or like from an ethics perspective? Because we have the concept of protective discrimination. Even we are providing equal opportunity to people, they may not be able to give that talent. For instance, we are providing reservations to people from middle class, but if you are looking into the LI institutes like IIT, and even in the UPSC exam, so the disparity is very huge. So what do you think? Like access to technology, would it solve the problem, or like, what is your take on what are the objectives of solving inequality? And like, what do you think? What what it would take? Like, mere access to resources will it solve that?
You are asking me, right?
Yes, yes.
So I think so. I will try to give an example, like analogy. Like since there is a lot of AI, use of AI and digitalization going forward, and we are looking forward to a kind of class where adaptive learning takes place. Like teacher have a data points of every student on key learning metrics, and he analyzes every student. He is able to give a special attention or a special customizable solution instruction to every student based on those data points. But uh, suppose the rules are like this, that every student should come with their own tablet or mobile phone, and then they will log into some kind of a digital classroom, and there they will take the test which will collect the data points, and then the teacher will have those access to those data points. But suppose someone who cannot afford a phone or a tablet or a digital device, so he comes there, so teachers does not include that person, or that person takes a physical test or something, but the data of that person is missing. So since we are like so this is going to create an inequality, right? Because now the teach all the focus of the teacher has come to those data points, right? So he is going to customize his instruction or make changes in his instruction according to the insights that has been received through those data points. But what about the missing data? He is not going to think about or consider even the missing data. So I mean, that's also, I think, what is happening with the digitalization push that the government, different state governments and central government is making, because the missing data nobody will care about. So this is the in excess to the inequality I was talking about. The reservations in higher education and also in government jobs. So I think these are certain changes in the rules of economic transactions or social engagement that tries to negate that impact of income inequality or socio-economic inequality. But we should try to look at every step. We should try to look that can we negate some effect of inequality, or is there any impact, there an impact of inequality on how people access to that. Like suppose take an example of a PhD program. So who will go for the PhD program? People who are from a lower socioeconomic background, they will always choose a job because they just want food on their table. They want to take care of their family. Their socioeconomic background is not well, so they cannot afford a PhD program unless PhD program pays well, unless it is government subsidized, unless government supports it financially. So this PhD program, which government does not support a certain section of people, is creating inequality, creating access inequality in access to the program. Being in the education domain itself, think about higher education. Higher education is also kind of technology, right? Because you are getting trained and skilled in a certain way that you are more employable, more the country becomes more productive. You become more productive. But how do there are government sponsored institutions, IITs and IITs and other institutions which are government sponsored, but their access is through exams, right? Through entrance exams. But there is no provision for people who come from lower socioeconomic background that helps them to prepare better or prepare in a way that they can come in par with other people who have access to coachings and other things. So again, this sorting and selection process, which is these exams, again they are creating inequality and access to the higher education. So I think government, there should be we should look always when we introduce any technology or government is deploying any form of technology, like even DPI. Government is trying to build DPI, but so that use of precision AI and customizable solutions in your how you sow your crop or what kind of fertilizers you use. It becomes so that it can increase the productivity of the farmers. But who will use these data points to do the precision agriculture? Those have big farmlands, those are big farmers. They will their productivity will increase. So what it means that the small landers, farmers, relatively their economic competitiveness is going to be impacted, right? So this again, unless the government takes care of this before introducing this DPI or any technology, unless government thinks about what kind of inequality it can create in accessibility, so that will be a good starting point if government starts thinking before deploying any kind of technology or.
Great, great. Actually, mentioned about actually the accessibility point and the right to be seen. We, when, when we are creating a society based on data, we have the right to be seen, we have the right to be captured in the data. Find out the quality that we do. Secondly, you mentioned about the kind of coaching system and culture that being developed as a gateway to the higher education institute, and how it is impacting the already existing inequality and how it is negating the reservation system that we have in the state to bring people who are faced oppression in the past. So, I mean, that's a very interesting discussion. And at this juncture, I would like to mention, like Haider also mentioned about the notion of equity. I think it is very relevant when you said like some farmers, like the big farmers will get advantage of the DPI that the government is building. So we cannot always separate the question of inequality with equity, from equity. And either I'm coming to you, I'm asking like, what is your like, if you want to solve for the problem of inequality, like, what are the objectives of that? Like you mentioned about equity, you are like, I mean, are you morally inclined towards an equitable society, or do you think equity always lead to more efficiency? Or what is your take on?
Like I really liked Digvijay's point on how education is technology. That's a fresh perspective I'm taking away. Like that was an insight for me, right? I never thought higher education as a means of technology. Technology as a word means very different for me. So that's something I took away from. So to answer or give my thoughts on the objectives to solve for inequality, we need to go back to the problem statement, I feel. Is inequality a problem, right? Before we say an objective, how do we solve for it? We have to define why is it a problem and in what context. Like Digvijay took the education aspect of it, right, which included higher education, access to PhD programs. Rajat again went back and he told it's very subjective for him. He can't look at it objectively. Again, it had to do with caste. So what? So here we are talking about social inequality, and that's a reality that we all live in. Now, the objective to solve for social inequality in what aspect matters a lot before we give out, any objective is which problem statement are we looking at? Is it to deal with inequality of education? Some cases we want inequality to be there, right? An example, like I think at the start of this call, there was a discussion about what's our take on war. I would want the country I live in to have exponentially more nuclear arsenal or a bigger army. That's an inequality I want to live with because it gives me power, right? Or it makes me feel safe. In a country, I know we are a large country, our army is far more superior than that of our neighbor. That gives me a protection. That's where inequality favors the status quo. I like it. So, if I had to say one thing that Rajat also mentioned is the political will. If you have to solve for any problem at scale or at policy, I feel individual inequality to solve individual inequalities, it's very difficult, like attributes, right? You did mention, right? Individual inequalities may lead from some attributes. Some genetically, some people are advantageous. I would say if we are talking about education or any policy, I would say political will, administrative ease, political will, administrative ease. These should be our objective. Like any policy that's being framed, does it have a lot of political backing? Like, is there a social movement attached to it? You politics can't be far from the people. If there is, politicians won't be involved. Is it administratively doable? Right. And is everyone winning? Like going back to the game theory one, no? Is it a net positive sum game? Are there more gainers? That is what I would look at. So objective of any good policy to solve inequality is to create a positive sum game at the end of the day. I would come to that. Can you keep the larger stakeholders? So mapping out the stakeholders and ensuring everybody wins. Anytime and everybody who wins is somebody who is a significant stakeholder. Again, if and you have to give voice to everyone. An example of somebody from low socioeconomic status pursuing PhD, right? It's the way the game is set up. If even if I'm from low socioeconomic, I don't want PhD. Why are you pushing PhD down my throat, right? I want to earn money, right? I want to get out of this poverty trap. So how do you create favorable game conditions or this? I remember Rajat telling Mahol. How do you create that Mahol, right? How do you create that entire ecosystem where all the players win? And if there are losers, it get negates in the future. Like there was a mention, right? In future, how do you negate that? So I feel the objectives would be to ensure map out and ensure it's a positive something. Like all your stakeholders are going away with something and it's been communicated the same way as well, both in spirit and in action. Usually, what happens is NEP is a great example of being great in paper, but in spirit, we do see it. So, yeah, the other part of it is the implementation. A lot goes very well in paper, right? I believe our theory is very strong. Our administration, we are all good at making policy, but the real gap is the implementation. And the more you reduce it, for me, an objective, because I'm at implementation side, will be how do you reduce the gap of what's in paper and how it's followed in spirit. So yeah, culmination of all the points that were made earlier. That's my take on it. And yeah, to define the problem statement, this is very generic, very broad. If you could narrow it down, that. But for any policy or any matter of fact that impact, this is how it should be. That's my take on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we actually thought of narrowing it down, but we didn't thought like inequalities are like broader concepts, and maybe we can have a discussion within this, session, and next time we can narrow down. We'll have continued session because this is a topic that spans around a lot of like it's a huge topic, and if you want to narrow down, like it can be through a discussion, it can be like it can be done today. And as you mentioned, like you have mentioned a very, very structured manner of like dealing with inequality. Right? It's a very structured and it's a very from a governance perspective, it is a thing that we should go with, like creating a positive something and more people benefiting from it. And these are very, large questions. And contrary to that, we also have schemes that will benefit the minority, like the religious minority the gender minorities act. So that is also a part of the question of inequality, equity, and access to resources. So what is your take on that? How do you see it?
No, I see, like I told, no, if some minority group is like positive affirmation, like positive discrimination there, where you have affirmative action there, right? For minorities, again, what positive sum game here means is you when you enable the minority to get certain or you have this reservation, so from someone else you are quote unquote taking away their chance or opportunity, you have to make sure that they're not losing, right? If you're giving right to minority, but if you make the majority feel unsafe, it's not going to happen. That's where that mahol, that political will does not come, right? That's where you create an environment when you're giving affirmative action or you are creating these opportunities for somebody who is downtrodden. It can't be that you enable them, but you need favor of the majority. So how do you design it in such a way that everybody sees it as a win? Everybody should be on board, right? That was my take on it. Like, it's not that a policy should always be majoritarian. A policy should be such that where majority people are feeling like this is my policy, right? They should not feel distant from it. That's something that I want to add to it.
So basically, like people should understand and they should backing the things that we are implementing.
Before you move to Tejaswa, I just wanted to mention to Haider, what did you say was sounds very practical way to go forward when we are dealing with inequality. Me especially was thinking more very in an abstract way. Injustice, there is injustice, and we need to solve. But I just also think that your idea is like very utilitarian, like everybody should be favored, and yeah, so I just wanted to mention that observation.
Yeah, I mean that we'll discuss like in the next part, I think.
Yeah, and the thing that you said about everyone should have a voice, I think that's very important. I mean, this also again reminds me of Professor Lada's class, Management of Societies, that how there should always be a conflict. Unless there is a conflict, till you have a conflict between sections of people or between two individuals, there are more chances that you will get to equality or equity. So
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
again I remember one more thing that I was mentioning about how inequality is based on lack of access or difference in access to technology. When you started this conversation, you told us like how when economies advanced from different periods, there were more access to equality improved. So I was thinking like, yes, that is right. So how is the conflict? Because I was seeing technology as a one factor of inequality. But I think what happened when economies advanced was formalization of laborers. So when they started working in industries, there was more formalization than agriculture. Then we started working in corporates in firms. There were again more and more formalization. So and we connected it to the voice because in informal economy people are more prone to inequality, right? Getting used off or getting exploited. So they are making a union, raising your voice, maintaining that conflict. It helps because I think that's how naturally unionization and these things emerged to help the people who are in the informal sector. Whatever theory we talk has always been there through practical measures. People see people who are affected, they already know like what next practical step they need to make, and we study backward when we study theory. So that's just one observation I wanted to say.
so yeah, I agree. Because, theories are made out of like hypothetical thinking or based on what happened in the past, what will happen in the future. They look into the patterns of things that happen. So as you mentioned, Digvijay, and very important, like the voice of people is very important to address the question of inequality and demand things from the authority, right? So Haider also mentioned, they also mentioned that. I would like to ask, like, Tejasvi, since you are working with the Jennifer as and uh, how do you see this problem? Like, what do you see as the objective of solving inequality, and like, what do you see? Like, are people very you know are people conscious about their status, and are people wanting to solve inequality? We can give an example. I mean, that will be okay.
Okay, so like Heather was saying, like when we as looking inequality, we should look kind of a root cause of it, right? So from where it is stemming, either it can be a social cause, socially it could be, then it could be economically, right? And there is one more kind of inequality is politically also. So I always try to look everything in a political sense also, that why is it happening. So when we are talking about inequality, is it benefiting the political class? Are the schemes are being aligned to benefit those type of political class? Now looking in the terms of Bihar, let's say for example, many recruitment of police officers were being done of the Yadavs, and it happens in Uttar Pradesh also, right? So what was happening is you are making a class of society more powerful. Yadavs are more recruited in the police force. Now it is creating an inequality again between Yadav and other OBCs. Now within these OBCs, there will emerge an extremely backward class, right? So a political class like Yadav is ruling. They have a more, say, a political. They are powerful politically also. They have land also. They have money also. They have police force also. And within this OBC caste, they have risen from other OBCs, including the mandals and if we call the caste also and everyone. So in this case, how politics has shaped the inequality, right? So there was no case of any historical sociological inequality in this case, right? The example which I gave you, it just stemmed out due to the political reasons. So when you look towards creating a just and fair society, equity based society, you have to look who is benefiting from it also, and you have to look into the politics of that area. So that is a very much trickier part when you are tackling the inequality. If you are now, this inequality has created two voter base, one for the Yadavs and one who are left out. So you will have two political parties who will be benefiting from the votes of both of them. Now one will be the Yadav party and one would be the Mandal party, right? So one will come again, I will make policies for you, I will make this for you, I will advocate more reservation seats for you, something of like that. And they will say, Mandal, okay, now give votes to me. And if they come to the power, they will advocate for them. And then again, they will try to something rise above it and go beyond that. We are more powerful than the others. And again, a situation will be created within 10-20 years where you will see another caste, due to political reasons, have become more powerful. Again, a case of inequality. So yes, in this could be a political lens to inequality, I would like to give.
I had a question to Tejaswa. So you the example that you mentioned here. So it's cyclic in nature, right? I mean, it's not a persistent inequality because whichever section of the society comes in power or their representative comes in power, so they will get empowered. They will get more access to resources, more voice. So it's like cyclical, right? It's not like self-spreading. Like if you leave it, I mean, if the situation changes, it will not self-generate inequality.
So in some cases like Bihar and some parts of UP where the caste is a major factor, this will be a cyclical thing. Like whose caste is coming to the power and who is making this. But now as we are getting more progressive, where the caste and something where more education based and more development based politicians are coming, they are leaving these things behind. And that could be an enabler for us to remove this inequality. That could be a solution to it. Like we should look into in terms of the development and leave this caste based politics. Until we leave this caste based politics, it will be cyclic in nature. Every time a politician will come and they will support their caste, and then they will the other 70% politician will come, then again he or she will support his caste, and this will be a cyclic in nature. So caste based politics is a major factor, I feel, that is happening. And not in only North India. If you look into the Southern India also, these caste-based politics happen. I have read about Tamil Nadu, the Moklathur community, which comprises of three castes, I guess. They dominate that caste. There are many dominant castes in every places. So it happens everywhere. But UP Bihar is a special case.
I mean, also adding to Tejaswa's point, even in Bengal, right, you had zamindars before who used to exploit the tenants, like full exploitation, and after that, somehow that generational wealth is still there with their, I mean, great grandsons and everyone. So that is persistent, and as you told, like for land reforms in India, and even for the recent walk of vote for the Muslims, there have been so many revolts. So many protests everywhere. So I think it boils down to political will, unless that is there, this caste and all will be there.
They are benefiting
Also,
from it. Just simply put, they get benefit from this inequality and this caste-based politics. So yes.
Also, Tejaswa, I also come from UP. So you come from Allahabad, right? What did you tell?
Kanpur.
Kanpur, yeah.
Kanpur.
So I come from Sultanpur.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rajat was
And I
also
think what Rajit mentioned, I think maybe, I'm just thinking out loud, is exploitation at the heart of the inequality everywhere? Because, so do we, the examples we mentioned, each one of us, I'm just trying to
So
think, is exploitation at the heart of every example that we mentioned here?
yeah.
it's a
I think
outcome.
even this, for the example Haider mentioned, right? At the borders, you want inequality. So that is not exploitation, that is a need. So I think there are different perspectives on this.
There you're not, but there you're not viewing from a third point of view, right? You are viewing from the point of view who is benefiting from the inequality. So, like, you are the one exploiting the inequalities. That's a different thing, I guess.
Actually, like if we didn't have these nuclear weapons or warfare, modern weapons, I mean, what would be the condition? We don't fear like these wars that much. But still, even without these nuclear weapons and all, from another perspective, war was there. And during the Cold War time, we have the concept of nuclear deterrence. Just by having nuclear weapons, countries stop, going towards war, full on war each other because they know one mistake can cause the entire world. It could destroy the entire world. So these are two different perspectives of like this theory. Like you can say that this is an exploitation, but still like countries like everyone will strive to become the better.
My thought on that is like something just going back to the cyclical nature. War has been our reality as a human society because of resources. I read a quote somewhere when goods don't cross border, armies will. Right? You need food to survive. And if you don't have food to survive, you'll obviously resort to violence. Nobody wants violence unless it comes to their necessity, right? Currently, yeah, these are proxy warfares, but I believe we are ushered into an era of, continued peace for the past half a century or so since Second World War. That's because nuclear deterrence is one aspect of it, but the other is also trade, right? Earlier, it used to be a kingdom war. You go to war, you right, your army wins, you get goods. Then again, it was very cyclical and it was growth never happened. But since industrialization, war became a main foray. Since trade became more lucrative than war. War used to happen because war was lucrative. Now war doesn't happen because war is not lucrative. In India, even for that matter of Pakistan does not want a war because they eventually understand it's not lucrative. For them, perhaps terrorism is lucrative, and that's another topic altogether.
So we will discussing about the politics, like role of politics in intervening society, addressing the inequality. But from Tejas's perspective, what I understood is that despite the caste playing like a role like, to marginalize people, to create an unequal opportunity to people, it is still persistent. It's a major thing for the election. And it's a major thing for a party to win the election. So I'm coming back to this point of that like the greatest happiness of majority will lead to policy making. The policy will following this logic of causing greatest happiness of greatest number of. But in this case, we are saying that a very privileged group, like the politicians, are getting benefit from this caste politics, and the majority, the people of the country are, being, sidelined. But still, this is continuing. I mean, so my take on is that, like, what are the ways to tackle this? Like, what are the? This is one sort of inequality that we are seeing still persisting, despite it's only, benefiting a light minority. So, what are the ways through which we could tackle inequality like this? Like, what are the vehicles of tackling? One is the political vehicle to create a counter narrative to it, and based on that, go ahead with that. Second is like policies. So, one controversial, it's very controversial take. Like, we should avoid caste-based reservation, and we should include income-based reservation. This has happened in ancient Greece. This has happened in ancient, and they came beyond the notion of caste-based, water bank politics and all, and it became a more like a economics and incentive-oriented type. The caste is a very different incentive that we cannot go beyond with the logic like we are following, and we also don't know whether the reservation. We haven't conducted an impact study of the current reservation system that we have. What's the impact of that and all? Thinking with this perspective, what do you think are the ways or vehicles to solve inequality? I'm just coming to Haider. What do you think?
See, for me, it's again, we have reservation system, but looking at data of how many like IITs, IIMs, while this reservation system exists, how many of these seats are actually occupied, right? Something like UPSC you did mention, since a lot of people get in, the matriculation is higher, but in top IITs, IIM, the highest suicides are disproportionately towards people who are from oppressed caste, right? I would say again, I don't know which district or state you mentioned about letting go of caste and having income as the criteria.
It's ancient Greece.
Ancient Greece, okay. I mean, it's ancient Greece, and ancient Greece has its own problem, but ancient India has caste. See, it's not about I don't feel it's just an economic problem, right? All knowledge, or maybe like Digvijay said, no, technology access was with Brahmins. The entire knowledge or of Vedas was with them. Like, they were the custodians of it, and they told God ordained them, and that was in problem of inaccess. It's not just about wealth. You can have all the wealth in the world, but what about knowledge, right? If you don't get knowledge, a Kshatriya was a ruler, he was a king, but end of the day they had to listen to a priest or a Brahmin, right? Socially, they were still considered much more higher up than them. So for me, I believe India is it in a place of income inequality, or I still feel personally caste case census and caste-based affirmative action is needed, and we have a long way to go till we do not, solve the problem of social inequality. The economic inequality is the other aspect of it. Both go hand in hand, but we still have a long way to go. For me, it's just I don't see a need for a new policy or a new, interventions. More of what we are actually doing in paper should come alive. That is what I feel the biggest issue here is implementation, right? Something that Tejasvi told, people vote for the popular leader. It's because of Modi's charm and his magnanimous personality, right? We have seen in election posters, India has a culture of God. We have this demigod figure. All our politicians are above humans. They can't, they are all pure. We have this worship. We idol worship people. We idolize so many people. We idolize our heroes. We idolize our politicians. We keep their photo bigger, a small, like he told no, Bahubali Chota Renga, Modi will have a bigger photo. So I feel if India, like our democracy is a grassroots democracy, right? We elect the local representative that in turn elects a prime minister, right? Nobody elects a prime minister directly. The basic civic education, I would say, then would like if it's actually followed in spirit, and we actually you give people the power, or you just tell them you are empowered. This is how you should be acting. Like if the issue is of transformer, right? In global India mein jo ho raha hai, it shouldn't matter for those people. That's development, right? That's how it should be. Right? I believe policy or whatever it is, it's very well laid out. Our institutions are there, right? Being the largest democracy, I believe people should have that knowledge. I mean, even if I have the knowledge, I rarely know about my local MLA. It's because I have to search for my local MLA. I mean, we need a paradigm shift where, local governance, local politics are at forefront rather than, this narrative building of national politics. India as a whole, I believe even if BJP did win a lot of seats, it was through BJP in UP is very different from BJP in South India, from BJP of Kerala, right? But we again have this notion of, BJP stands for one thing. No, BJP Northeast is totally different. The different versions of BJP happening across India. And we have this national party system where, there is this one party but within the party there are, I believe he told, right, within OBCs, Yadavs are powerful, and we are not a homogeneous group. We need to realize that. And for me, the biggest way to tackle the problem is we as humans are a society of small hunter-gatherers, right? We were never meant to be this huge India as a country, or us as people were never meant to be governed by these huge centralized. We were just meant to be in small bands of people, and that's how our world works. So having a politics that's similar to that, like 140 people, right, or 200 people, that's how it should work. You need local solutions for local problems. You don't need even with education, like I believe Digvijay mentioned, right? There are different students altogether. But the missing data point here I see is the voice of people at grassroots gets crushed. The political class agenda keeps getting further. Everybody keeps talking about these hot takes, caste-based census or whatever. A village may not even care about that, right? For me, it's more to do. Yeah, go ahead. Tej.
Great, great.
Just a small question. I was just thinking, inequality is kind of symbolic also, right? And something like a census or when this caste is so much reinforced in our society, do you think these labels like SC, ST reinforces inequality or something like below poverty line or underbanked? So does this, just a question I was having when you talked about the census, will this will it increase the problem of inequality?
For me, my take on it is, I was having this discussion about POXO cases, right? Someone was telling me in the department that POXO cases are rising, and the reality of it is being reported. Having a census or having that system just rather than reinforce, it reports it. It says, hey, this is the reality yet. It doesn't say, it's not reinforcing, saying this is already there, we are reporting it. That's my take on it. That it just shows you the reality again and again. Rather than telling you are in, it just shows this is how divided or fragmentized the society is. It reports it in a better way.
So there is one thing that Bihar did. Actually, what happened was Naxalism was very high in the southern Bihar. So what the Bhumiyas or the upper caste did was they removed their surnames from their name, something like Mishra or something, and they added their father's name in their itself name. So a Rajiv Mishra became a Rajiv Ranjan kind of thing. So you will see many names like that, like the surnames get removed, that labels get removed, that Brahma or something upper caste gets removed, and you become something very homogeneous to everyone becomes. You never know the caste of that people unless you ask the name of some grandfather or something like that. So when you assign a label to him or something like that, I guess it gets reinforced or something like that. So yeah, Bihar did a very well work among the upper caste in that sense.
Yeah, I think in UP Bihar, the people who are from lower social background, they also remove their surname, right? Voluntarily, they add Kumar or Kumari, son, right? So that people don't label, they don't
Ladies at
recognize them from
Devi.
label. And I also, just for what you said, I also remembered the example of Nano, like how it had a label of low economic background, so people rejected it because they reinforced them. Idea that
Yeah.
I will be seen as a low economic background person.
Yes.
So,
Kind of.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Great example.
yeah, I mean, we are talking about two different things. Removing their name is something that they may get the dignity that they want. Somebody from the uh, higher caste is discriminating them based on their identity. The removal of their names are causing them, gain that dignity. It's a good. But at the same point, in order to achieve the benefits of the positive discrimination laid down in the Constitution of India, I mean, you don't need to add your last name, I mean, first name with your still you have to access it if you want to get out of the condition, poverty. If you want to attain a good job and attain a social life. That's also a reality. So both things are there. I mean that's my take on it. And I'll come to Digvijay and I would like to ask what Haider has pointed out. He pointed out that greater decentralization is a kind of a vehicle to tackle this problem of inequality. Right? If we are giving our local self-governments more authority, our problems can be heard, right? Rather than a prime minister who is, ruling the country from Delhi. I mean, I am in Chennai. If I want to speak about my issue, prime minister is not accessible. So, greater decentralization is one way to go. What is your take on this? Like, do you think it's a good idea, and what are the other ideas that you have?
So, no, starting from what Haider mentioned about people seeing the political leaders as demigods in India, I think that's also an outcome of that knowledge gap of how politics works. Because there is an opacity, right? There is a lack of transparency that how you become a political leader, how you achieve that position. So that's when they start thinking like, okay, he's like he has a supernatural charm, he has a different knowledge kind of thing, like how they perceived king as a person who is more connected to god, person sent by god. So I think that's also a result of political inequality, because they don't understand there is a gap knowledge in knowledge of how politics are played. I think decentralization, of course, decentralization is, I mean, it should have been implemented better. It was in the constitution to be implemented, but it never got implemented in the spirits like Heather was mentioning. And you know what Tejaswa was saying about caste politics being played. I think like that's also because to create a electoral vote bank, because when you play on the caste politics like Yadavs, you create, if the Yadavs are in majority, or if they constitute a significant section of the your electoral bank, so you create a permanent kind of majority on playing that politics. So you assure that whenever you play that card, you will get certain percentage of votes for surety. So that's also again exploitation, right? You create that inequality to exploit your own gains from that. And like the casteism in fundamental, even like they were denied access to religious places, to wells, to certain, to even they were not allowed to do certain kind of trades, because if if a person from a lower socioeconomic background opens a restaurant or a food stall, people from social background in the villages, they won't eat from there, right? They would say, I won't eat your food. You should open only a barber shop, or you should only work as a housemaid in our houses. I mean, they were restricted to certain trades, to certain places, so that they can be exploited in some other ways as manual scavengers, suppose, like, because they will just assign those jobs to low socioeconomic background people. So if they went on doing some other trades, who will do their manual scavenging, who will clean their toilets? So because so these caste based systems were, I think, were put in place just to exploit, just to do the exploitation in other ways. And even in education, like vocational education was so much pushed forward historically, and even in India initially, the focus on basic education was far less than the focus on vocational education, so that they can be exploited, right, as a laborer, as a worker. So I think most of these inequalities are created just for the purpose of exploitation. I mean, this, I think I've been getting to this point only in this discussion only. I didn't think about it earlier. So there's been,
Just to
and
add to your point, sorry to interrupt. As you said that decentralization should be the way. Actually, the most of the caste politics happen at the grassroots levels only. So it's a double-edged sword kind of thing. And Ambedkar also said that casteism happens. Rural is the ghettos of the casteism or hub of casteism. So yeah, sorry.
yeah, yeah, I think that is true. I don't know how we can approach to solve it. I mean, that's why we are discussing, so that any new idea or any alternative, possible practical alternatives can come into consideration. But I think there has been some, measures in the past implemented, and which has worked, beautifully. Like, the SHG system, the SHG programs, like people in women from villages and other social help groups can come together, and then rural banks can lend them loans, so that it increases credibility if you take a loan in a group. So I think it was a Grameen Bank, like, for example, which was started by Muhammad Yunus. So these kind of economic models, these kind of social and economic programs. I mean, even a simple economic instrument loan is, I think, is a mediator for income inequality. You can take a loan and you can invest in capital, which you could not otherwise if you are from a low economic background. So simple instrument like a loan is also a mediator for income inequality. So I think we should try to think of those social and economic models, programs that can create a systematic and sustainable change. So I do not have any really plausible alternative in mind, but I think this we should try to think in our next series or next episodes.
Yeah. I mean, degree, I think that markets are the one of the tools that has been used by Western nations successfully to tackle the problem of inequality. Right? In a market, you are considered as a person who has the capacity to buy. Nobody asks you like what is your caste, where are you coming from, and all. But in India, it's a little bit different. It's interlinked with the caste as well. If you are from a particular caste, some people won't touch your product. Somebody won't send you something if you are from that particular class. So in India, it's a bit different. And I think Either mentioned grassroots level intervention. I mean, it's a way. I mean, to go, but keeping in mind what like caste is very prevalent in grassroots level. But what I feel is that people know each other in the grassroots level. They can see how they are living. They can interact more. They can have fruitful discourses. As a nation, we are trying to progress and spread education. I think that will be a transformative point. The grassroots level politics and decisions are implemented properly, and the power structure. I mean, the power structure is very important. Like in this grassroots area, the higher class will be more economically and politically powerful. If I'm not wrong. So, how are we accommodating that power imbalance between the people from lower class and people from higher class will be also another point of discussion. We can balance that power structure and have a discussion in the grassroots level. I think that will be a step that we will be taking to address this problem. It's not solving this. And legit,
Also, I think that most of these, caste-based problems at the ground level, like Tajaswa mentioned, I think it's also because agricultural economy, most of it. If when we will move towards non-farm, jobs, if the non-farm jobs will expand in the rural places, I think this will somewhat reduce. This should, I think.
So just to add, when you are comparing with the West, there is when you see the social mobility there is a class hierarchy. You can get the education, you can get the health services, and you can move up the ladder, right? But in India, it is the caste hierarchy. Even if you have all the resources, you cannot move up the ladder. Even if, and also there are intersectional sectionality of things. You are a Dalit, if you are a woman, and if you are from a small place, all three places will enforce a major inequality than a say a normal high class women in a urban space. So the problem is very much complex in that sense.
I mean, yeah, in India, yeah, very complex.
Just had a thought here, like I think we were discussing earlier, Joe. Not here, but offline that uh, I don't know if it's from Ambedkar, but caste system is like an apartment with no lift. You're stuck wherever you are born there and you're stuck there, you're going to die there. Kito, social mobility is not possible. You don't have staircase, you don't have a ladder. Health is not a problem here. That's just something that came to my mind. Sorry.
Legit, like, what is
Yeah,
your opinion?
yeah. So I agree with Heather. I think he gave a very interesting example of the building and the lift. But I think from some people, I think I've read a few articles and I got a feeling that democracy is the solution. Like, but I don't agree with that. So if you see, we have been a democracy for so many years, and the inequality gap, like there was a World Inequality Lab report, I think. Right now, our inequality is worse than the pre-colonization, I mean, era. So that was a stark thing. So I'm thinking like, where did we fail and how can we improve that? One thing that comes into mind is like the role of media, right? And the role of social media platforms like Twitter. And if you see the censorship, like the censors there, and it leads to like you don't hear voices from the marginalized people. And on top of that, there is like the example Tejaswa was giving. Like people dropping off their caste from their surnames because they thought the collective good is greater than the self-interest. They took that decision, they took that thing. So, and there are many people who don't do that because they benefit from that. They have their self-interest. So, I think from a media's point of view, they should tell that the people living in that building is unhappy, like the from the example Haider was giving. If we have this perception that okay, everything is fine, that field that building is functioning properly, then that social norm will not get implemented, that these things should not be done, these things, that is where, so it is not only a bottom up approach from the grassroots to the top, it can be a top down approach also. The pressure can be built from the media and then the grassroots people can actually feel no, this is not right. So for me, media and the role of social media plays a very important.
Great, great. I mean, I totally agree with your point. Because without the discourse of, something like art is bad being spread, everybody is talking about that. People having quality discussion. But I don't feel like this being challenged, and it's not very easy to go. Implement that social equality. As I said, like we have policy, but we are not good at implementing. Caste discrimination is, by law is something that is like, I mean, condemned by both, and we are still not able to implement. So that implementation level task can or things can start from the media, social media, like the informal channel, if not from the government. Then the political will followed by political will at greater growth at the grassroots. I think that is one way that we could go forward. It's a very complex question and it's a very hypothetical question as well. You can think hypothetically. Do you think we can have a world, I mean, without inequality or like with very less inequality? I mean, do you think that world is possible?
You
I will
asking
give
me?
you an
Those, do you have an example to start with,
yeah.
like an
I
example
mean,
of a large democratic country who is less equal than India or who is low inequality?
no, we don't have. That's what I'm trying to like have a brainstorming session here, and I have read this argument or concept by John Rawls. It's a very hypothetical scenario. I don't think like in real life how I mean it's not even possible if you are thinking. So there's a concept of veil of ignorance by John Rawls. What he says is that so people like us will be taken back from the society, and then a veil will be put. We won't know what will be our gender, what will be our caste, if we are reassigned our position in the society that we are in. We don't even know we'll be in the same position, in the same country. And we are being asked to make policies and laws for the world that we want to live. So the thing is that in such a scenario, you will think like, okay, if I am being the person who is, coming in the last in the caste level, or if I am a disabled, I mean, I should be benefiting from the law. Everyone will think like that, and they will set up laws that will benefit the least advantage, if not the person who's advantage. Because there is a possibility that I can be assigned to the role of the person who's least advantage. So that is one hypothetical situation. So how do we apply? Like as policy makers, I think we can think from this perspective, like who's the least advantage from this policy, or I mean, how can we make the system better? Like if I am in that position, like how will I think? Like or like what that people are thinking. So this is one kind of a thing. And secondly, like there is a Marxian utopia, like where there is no private property and there is no state, people living in harmony. Which means that if they say private property is a problem, but we can see that that's not the problem that we face in India. These are some of the things that I wanted to bring, but I don't know the implementation like possibilities. I mean, it's nearly impossible. So I mean, if you have anything like
No,
this,
but you can share them, na? We want to listen.
so the Marxian state. So in the Marxian state, Marx says that like so there is two classes like the people who control the means of production, that's the capitalist, and the base the proletarian who work. So if you're looking to the distribution of wealth and income, those who control wealth will get more from the from the workers. Like workers are actually working, but the people who are managing wealth is getting more. So there will be an inequality in terms of the income distribution or wealth distribution. That will eventually perpetuate into other forms of inequality as well. So what Marx is saying is that when the inequality is very extreme, when the people don't have ability to buy things because of the competition, because everyone is trying to monopolize things. Right now we are seeing that like companies are monopolizing, like network economies are coming. Google is a very big monopoly. They're having a huge share of income. Likewise, the monopolization will cause revolution. People will get fed up and it will cause a revolution. Then the people will take the ownership of the state. It will create a socialist society. In that society, redistribution will be based on our ability or our contribution, which means that workers will get their fair share and things will be more equal. And he says that there is a third state. So in socialist society, there will be state because the capitalists will be trying to coming back to power. So after the eradication of that power struggle, there will be a communist utopia where there is no difference between capitalist, socialist. People will live in harmony because they don't value private property because everyone is getting what they want. Because they are working, they are getting their fair share. That is the idea. But this is not accounting to the caste system that we have. does not account to the individual difference we have as people. I mean, these are the things that like I thought of while formulating this question. Is a world without inequality even possible, or is it desirable? What do you think? Is it desirable or
So I feel inequality kind of it they are very important roles, right? Like a surgeon or like a army officer or something like that. And if he or she does the good work, it should be awarded based in terms of monetary basis, based in terms of the class basis or something like that. It should be awarded and should be rewarded. Then only we have the incentive to work hard. Then only we have the incentive to work for innovation, something like that. And imagine an army where everyone is a major, right? Or something like a general. Who will take the command and who will bring that? So inequality is important. You have to remove the barriers to achieve something, to get something, right? So to create a just society. For example, I am a Dalit surgeon. I became a surgeon, and someone from the upper class became a dentist. So what happened in this just society? We all gave that two people the right to education, the right to health, and everything. And on the basis of that, they got the merit, and they were rewarded basis on that. So after that, a hierarchy was made. Like the Dalit person became the surgeon, and the upper class person became a, say, a dentist or something like that, or the lower MBBS branch which they get. So again, what is happening is here, you have given the access to them, you have removed the barriers. Now it depends on the person how it will utilize that resources, and then they will get that hierarchy position. So yes, it will exist in some form or the other. But the whole objective should be to remove the barriers.
I mean, so you mentioned about the incentive. So we can think about different types of incentive. Like one is like psychological incentive of like people celebrating your leadership. You mentioned like one if there are no incentives, innovations won't happen. People won't work very hard. That is a criticism that comes against this communist society. But incentives can be different. So Marxist thinking is like it's from a different consciousness of human life. Like human beings will have a different consciousness. But it's a debatable thing. We don't know. I mean, currently, if you're asking me to live in a society, I don't think that. I mean, I don't know whether I'd be able to live. So it's a debatable thing. So, Vijay, like, what do you think about this?
No, like when you were mentioning about this Marxist idea, I think no, all the vices and virtues in the society are cyclical in nature. Like there is a property of elasticity in the society. Like when the society, or what is called leftist and rightist, right wing or whatever you call it. It goes to the extreme, and then something clicks, and it again restarts it. So it's all cyclical. All ideology, all virtues, vices. So when you mentioned the redistribution will happen after the revolution, then again there will be a point when inequality will reach to its top. So I think whatever we do, nature will play its course. But no, you mentioned about. I mean, so market. Yes, market. I think it is mostly fair. I mean, whenever government intervenes, then only most of the problems start emerging, and markets play fair, and more or less it always plays fair. But it's also exploitative. But can you call it exploitation? By, for example, when you start in a job market, you are a fresher, right? So you need, as a fresher, you need a job. You cannot sit empty and wait for, like, when I get the right value, I will take the job. So whatever value you get, you have to take, because you cannot wait. In terms of the, in that job market, you can be considered poor when you are a fresher. Poor in terms of the job opportunities, or if your skills are valued at the right level. But if you are a manager, if you have been a CEO of another company, you have enough social and economic capital, you have enough savings and all, that you can leave the job and you can wait till you get a certain your right value, a certain amount of value. And I think that's how CEOs get paid, so disappropriately they get paid. And because they can control the supply level of their skill, because they have that cushion, they have that income, savings, wealth. So they, in the job market, if you place these people, they are the most richest in terms of the job opportunities or whatever. So that's also the market only. I mean, there is no government intervention, but freshers will never get paid their right value, and CEOs will get overpaid. So I think, I don't know. There could be, I think, at least when government intervenes, I think there should be a, a part of the policy, section of the policy that looks into the inequalities that could possibly created by this policy, by the government intervention. So I think at least government should do its own part whenever it intervenes, and the market can take care of the rest of the things.
Agree. I mean, it's a good thing only. I think. So, as you mentioned, only government can solve the problem of maybe the caste system. It's not the market. We are establishing a market, but we need that push from the government or government side or political side to solve the problem of the caste. It's an example of how to tackle like adding government and the market. So, I think, do you think, you know, and a society where inequality is zero is decidable or is it possible?
Yeah, I think it's possible. So I will divide it into two parts. For example, if you consider the political class, right? So I mean, they can do the job at the bottom, like job at the top, right? But if you see the administrative system in India, like I have interacted with DMs and CDOs here, and the Manrega scheme it forms like 90% of their work pressure. Now, I work in education. I think through education, all these caste-based biases can be removed. But he or she doesn't have the time itself to focus on education. When we go, we just try and learn some key pointers and put forward our asks and we come back. We get our asks. But this shift, so should I blame that person? She is not at fault. But maybe because these, like, and to, and I tell you, even within the schemes, if you see the utilization for the schemes for the backward people, and many schemes are left in the back burner, and that is only because of the like there you can link the political will with maybe if the local MLA or MP puts pressure on them to do this, the election season is coming, then you see those schemes getting worked up. Like at the last moment, they will provide access by roads to the remote villages and all. So, and I can give you another interesting example. So there was a system, like there is still a system of Shiksha Mitras in UP. Okay, so previous day, so there are basically local people from the villages who get 10, 12,000 per month. Now, when Lalu Prasad, sorry, when Mulayam Singh Yadav was there, he had told that we will make them like permanent employees. Okay, but then after that, that rule got like that rule was gone, and then they told that you have to give the TET exam. If you qualify that, then you will get appointed. But like every other thing, everything that appointment also get delayed. So right now they are working as temporary employees. Okay. So I think like firstly political decision, yes, but I think implementation of schemes, like we're talking about decentralization, right? So implementation of schemes and giving like chance to everyone, hearing their voices. Because with decentralization comes the scope of innovation also. You can support the SHGs, you can support the local communities. Maybe they will come up with some like innovative way of sustaining their livelihood. Maybe getting improved in their handworks or like some local art. Okay, like those are like skills for them. Those are like acquired skills for them. So I think that if you focus, it can be solved. But if you are only talking about the political will, we have like I don't think like even in 50 years that will be possible.
Yes, I mean, it's a very valid point. And, so, I mean, either like you were also mentioning that we have good policy. So, I'm just asking a specific question like, do we have good policies to tackle caste system that remains in India? It's a form of inequality. So, from that perspective, do you think we have something laid down? I mean, a better way to tackle it? And you can also, I'm also giving you another thing like the same as I asked. Is society without inequality possible or design?
I will answer the second question first, okay? Because you are unnecessarily adding one extra question to my guess. So Rajit did mention about World Inequity Report, right? World Inequality Lab. I just perused through the website and I was looking at countries that have the least equality are also very less populated. Right. So these are these Slavic countries across Europe. Because they're homogeneous population, there is less inequality. And again, we are talking about social inequality. If you're asking, is inequality a world without inequality possible? I'll tell you by nature, no, because humans is not equal to tree. There is diversity everywhere. From the social lens, I also believe it is possible because look at these countries that have topped world inequality, right? They are homogeneous population. Homogeneous means like again, they're not very similar, but close to similar, right? So say Kerala or Tamil Nadu, like Kerala has universal education literacy right now, right? The homogeneous population, say of your hometown, will be much more equal compared to India. The more you zoom out, the more inequality you may be able to see. But then I would say, is India supposed to be like why take it as in India or like if the question is about is Bihar going to be as developed as Tamil Nadu? Because Bihar, by what yardstick are you measuring the word equality, right? So if you compare India, you take all the states, then you compare Bihar versus Tamil Nadu in so many other aspects. And in that sense, is equality possible? Again, socio like access to resources, yes. I just saw somewhere that Elon Musk is like the richest person, right? Digvijay was talking about how CEOs earn like multiples breaks of the lowest paid. Like Elon Musk is worth over $300 billion, perhaps more than Rockefeller ever was, right? He's in a world, but the worst of you did mention about a veil of ignorance theory where the worst of person is we have to think of from that lens and is better. I would say if you want a society where there is equality, and I would believe I would define that equality as the current status quo, whatever it is, it has to be changed into a certain way that the worst of whoever is the worst of, like coming from the utilitarian point of view, the worst of from the status quo is better than what it is. So say in this status quo there is somebody who is worse off and is facing evil. We create a new world or by redistributing resources in whatever fashion that is, this worse off person is better and majority are better, but this worse off section of society is better. And that for me would be a equal world. Right, and I believe it is very much possible. I'll give you an example of Orwell in Pondicherry. Everybody gets the same income. No matter the work you do, you are going to get paid 19,000 irrespective. I have been there, you know. So when you have same income level across and people do different things, there is somebody who is an MD there, and there is somebody who is a chef, but they earn the same amount, right? Irrespective, right? So income equality is very much possible. Redistribution of wealth, very much possible. Social equality, again, within homogeneous groups, it's possible. If you look at human population as a whole, my question would be, why do you want to have that equality? Right? We celebrate diversity. Why we don't want to create a homogeneous population, right? Within nature, we see different species thriving. Why do we want to see? But we should aim to ensure my equality doesn't trample on yours. That for me is equality. My right to equality, like if I get to breathe fresh air, so does somebody at Bihar, right? My right to equality doesn't trample on yours, and I believe that is possible. The first question of whether we have policies at place that can address the problem of equity or caste-based equity, I would say yes. We do have policies in place. How well are they implemented is again the question, right? Do we need more policies? Yes, there is a need for it. Tamil Nadu, like Tamil Nadu has 67% reservation, right? Mandal Commission, I believe, has kept it at 50. Like reservation cannot go above 50, like 50 percentage of all seats. But some states, follow the social justice model. Tamil Nadu specifically has given around 67 to 70% reservation. But the people are okay with it because it follows the social justice model that says it creates a ecosystem where it says if I give 70% reservation, us as a unit are going to progress, right? They bet bank on the future of it. And creating a world like that is possible. It's just do people in status quo want to change it, right? How do you bring about that? Overall, if I am really shocked to hear that we are doing worse of than pre-colonial times. I'm not aware of it. But if that's the case, it's very saddening to hear. But from my experience or whatever I've read, I've seen world becoming a better place and we are heading towards a positive direction. But yeah, this does baffle me that we are in a much more unequal world, like say 100 years back. I felt we are in a much more equal world and we are heading towards the right direction. But yeah, that's a setback in my mindset. I need to go and see like what's really happening. I thought we were heading towards a good place.
So in there was two things mentioned, right? One is the absolute poverty, like the roti kapri makan. That is a different concept. But the relative poverty which is there in our country. So
Okay.
based on that, but I had one like interesting question for you, a short one. I was seeing a video of Abhijit Banerjee, and there he was talking about Korea, right? So you told that income equality is possible, but
Hmm.
there are some unintended consequences of that. For example, in Korea, they give two kinds of pension to the retired people. One is from the normal, which we get, and on top of that, public from the government, basically. But there, because of that, there is intergenerational conflict. Because the younger people think that why are we giving money for the elderly people? So how do because also believe that economic equality is possible. Okay, but I wanted to hear your take on such things like for example this one like intergenerational.
But again, I would want to understand the more background of it, right? Because say, suppose younger generation have a conflict of why are we contributing towards it, their pensions, or are we, the younger generation, being burdened with supporting an older generation? That's happening in Japan also. That's where demographic dividend stops giving. So demographic dividends is like a, diminishing returns. India is supposed to be getting good returns for the next 50 years, but then we'll have diminishing returns, right? Somebody has to carry that burden. Here, the younger people have to take that burden of the elderly population. If there is an unrest, how do you create a win-win situation? Like, how do you ensure, I would say, in this context, how do you create a winning game for them also? That's the question there. I do not know much about it. But if any population feels I am unduly being, I'm carrying more burden, or this is adding to my, like suppose China, right? A younger person has to take care of much older people, like four people. You have larger people to feed. Then how does government apparatus come in there? How does government share the burden or creates a winning situation for them? I would look into that way, right? How does that happen? Say the government will share some burden, or you also get extra pension. Would like to know more about how it works there. But
Yeah, yeah. And
how?
also I feel that, as you already pointed out, I think that kind of inequality is sustainable in a society like Korea because their focus is not immediately on this. Like we are talking caste, right? I was just thinking like that caste, and you told that in the beginning that every country has a different context. Every state has a different context. So I was thinking on those lines that it's so diverse that inequality can be like it should come as a byproduct, right? We are going to solve a problem, then that inequality problem comes, and then we are having that. So I was just thinking on those lines.
I think like introduction of AI or the tools like for differentiated learning, right? Those in itself create inequality. Like they are supposed to level the playing field, but because of their advent, it creates an unequal outcome. That's something I've been learning.
Data. Data is very important when it comes to AI. I mean, I've been reading reports which say that data AI uses are male oriented. It will be also from task as well. People who have access to these things will be having more created an maybe if you even have any points we can discuss. Otherwise, we will stop recording.
Just like I had one thought you told, right? Jati kabhi nahi jati. I don't think it's part of nature, right? Jati kyun nahi ja sakti will be my question. Like you have to break down the apartment. Two parts to it. Like one is you need abolishment of caste, right? That's imperative. First is, create, like you told, is it the problem of caste or is it the problem of discrimination? I would say, what is the purpose of caste system then? See, if you remove discrimination, then why do you need jati at all? Haider didn't study civil engineering.
I think Haider, I think I agree that jati ja sakti hai, but I think see there are some people who will not change. I mean, there that has become an excuse. That is the only thing they can cling on to explain to provide as an excuse for their being like not being so successful, right? That's their only identity basically. So they will try to cling on to that. But what I feel ki like Digvijay was talking about, right? Ki if even a person in the higher caste has some aspirations, he wants to be successful in life. But that does not mean that he will abuse or exploit the lower caste people. I think opportunities are ample for their part. And if you do like, for example, inheritance tax, right? Like I am personally a big supporter of that. And because the top 1% controls like 40% of wealth in India, and the rest of the like 90% of people work in informal sector. So you see the gap, right? And right now, I think the rich people don't even know how to spend their money, right? They are going off to Mars to kill that time. So I think that's a gap. And as far as caste will always be there in India, but that should not become the norm. Like you should not do you should not harm anyone. You should not kill anyone. Those are the basic social collective norms which we need to adhere on.
Not think on that could be abolished. Maybe it's like it's a mandate that we need to get political will that society that we need. So if you want to sustain as a nation, we need to put our citizenship ahead of every other caste or like every other association that we have. But that's another point of view. But it is also a problematic in some sense, but less evil than the caste system that we have. So that's why I'm bringing this point. And
Mm.
I think, I mean, it's not a question of what people choose. It's also a cohesive place that I'm coming from. Like, based on the greatest happiness of greatest good and like more efficient society.
I would just go a step ahead and say annihilate. Abolish is still, you let it live. Annihilation is the
And yeah,
answer.
okay, yes.